have waged a secret war. For stands a warrior.
Her name's
Master the skills of the past.
It's about her, isn't it?
She was a prodigy from 5 years old.
Must protect the next.
Elektra wasn't just a superhero flick, it was a risky experiment, packed with secrets most fans never heard about. Welcome to J Cinema Film, where we uncover what really went on behind this controversial Marvel movie. Elektra is a superhero film based on the Marvel Comics character Elektra Natchios and directed by Rob Bowman. It serves as a spin-off from Daredevil, with Jennifer Garner returning as the lethal assassin. The story follows Elektra as she becomes entangled in a mission to protect a man and his gifted daughter from a deadly assassin sent by the Hand. The cast also includes Goran Visnjic! Giacomo William Lee, Kari Hiroyuki Tagawa, and Terrence Stamp. The screenplay was written by Zach Penn, Stuart Zeicherman, and M. Raven Meitzner, with Mark Steven Johnson credited for motion picture characters and Frank Miller for the original comic book characters. Production began in Vancouver the year before release. When Elektra premiered, it struggled both critically and commercially, earning far less than expected despite praise for Jennifer Garner's performance. Garner later returned to portray Elektra again in Deadpool Wolverine. Plot: after her death, Elektra Natchios is resurrected by the blind martial arts master Stick, who trains her in Kamaguria, an ancient art that grants visions of the future and the power to bring back the dead. Unable to control her anger and trauma, Elektra is expelled and eventually becomes a contract assassin. Years later, her agent receives an unusually lucrative job from a mysterious client, requiring Elektra to stay in a rented island home until the targets are revealed. While waiting, she meets a young girl named Abby and later Abby's father, Mark Miller. Elektra begins to grow close to them, only to discover that they are her assigned targets. She refuses the mission, leaving them behind until assassins from the Hand attack. Elektra returns to protect the two, placing herself in direct conflict with Kirigi, the son of the Hand's leader, who seeks Abby, known as the Treasure. Elektra attempts to hide Mark and Abby, but Kirigi and his team track them down. A deadly chase through the forest follows, with Elektra and the Millers fighting for survival. Elektra is poisoned in battle but is later saved by Stick and his chaste warriors. Stick reveals that Abby is a prodigy the Hand wants to exploit and that Elektra was once a prodigy herself, which contributed to her mother's death. Elektra realizes that this entire ordeal may have been a test of her compassion. She challenges Kirigi and confronts the truth about her past. A final battle unfolds, leading Elektra to defeat Kirigi, rescue Abby, and ultimately use Kamagura to bring her back from death after a fatal encounter with typhoid. In the end, Elektra parts ways with Mark and Abby, encouraging Abby to live a normal life. As she walks away, Stick appears one last time, reminding her that she turned out stronger and better than she ever believed. Cast and crew. Jennifer Garner's portrayal of Elektra Natchios in the 2005 film Elektra marked a pivotal moment in her career, transforming her from a rising television star into a bona fide action heroine on the big screen. Having first embodied the character in the 2003 blockbuster Daredevil, Garner's reprise was not born out of passion but necessity. Reports from the time indicate that Garner was contractually obligated to appear in a spin-off following her role in Daredevil, a commitment she later described as burdensome. In interviews, she openly admitted her hesitation, noting that the physical and emotional demands of the role pushed her to her limits, making even her grueling work on the ABC series Alias seem tame by comparison. Elektra was hard. It was a really intense job. It was the hardest job I have ever had. It made Alias look like a catwalk, which I didn't think was possible, Garner shared in a Q&A session, highlighting the exhaustive training regimen that included months of martial arts practice, wire work, and stunt coordination. This obligation stemmed from a multi-picture deal with 20th Century Fox and Marvel Enterprises, where her performance in Daredevil, despite the film's mixed reviews, proved lucrative enough to greenlight a standalone vehicle. The casting decision for Garner was essentially a carryover from Daredevil, where director Mark Steven Johnson had selected her after a rigorous audition process. In a 2004 feature, Garner recounted arriving at her Daredevil audition with her cell phone clipped to her waist, a practical choice for a busy actress juggling Alias. This unpretentious detail charmed producers, underscoring her grounded persona amid the superhero spectacle. For Elektra, no new audition was needed. Her established chemistry with the character and the Daredevil universe made her the default choice. However, Garner's ambivalence added layers to the production. She viewed the role as an extension of her Alias alter ego, Sydney Bristow, both women navigating worlds of espionage and combat with a blend of vulnerability and ferocity. Yet, Elektra's tragic backstory, a resurrected assassin haunted by her father's murder, demanded a deeper emotional reservoir. Garner immersed herself in the comics, studying Frank Miller's original run, to infuse the character with the brooding intensity that defined the source material. Preparation for the role was Herculean. Garner underwent 6 months of training under fight choreographer Wen Wu Ping, the legendary Hong Kong action director behind The Matrix and Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. This included proficiency in side daggers, the character's signature weapon, as well as eskrima stick fighting and Brazilian jiu-jitsu. These kick-ass roles seem to come naturally to you. Would you describe yourself as a kick-ass woman in real life? No, it's hysterical, Garner quipped in her Phase 9 interview, downplaying her athleticism while crediting the team's support. Offset, she balanced the physical toll with therapy sessions to process Elektra's psychological scars, ensuring her performance captured the anti-heroine's fractured psyche. Critics later praised how Garner's natural warmth humanized Elektra, preventing the character from devolving into a one-note killing machine. Her casting, though contract-driven, ultimately elevated the film, grossing over $56 million worldwide on a $43 million budget, and solidified her as a Marvel icon before the MCU era. Garner's commitment extended to advocating for authentic representation. She pushed for practical effects over CGI in fight scenes, arguing that real stunts would ground Elektra's otherworldly abilities. This decision influenced the film's kinetic action sequences, like the opening battle in a rain-soaked dojo, where Garner's sigh work gleamed with precision. Post-release, Garner reflected on the role's legacy in a 2024 behind-the-scenes clip shared during Deadpool Wolverine promotions, where she humorously reenacted Elektra's stretches in a dinosaur skull bed, nodding to the character's enduring camp appeal. Despite initial reluctance, her portrayal remains a benchmark for female-led superhero films, blending grace, grit, and genuine emotional depth. Kirsten Prout's breakout as the young Prout copyright G8 copyright Abby Miller. At just 14 years old, Kirsten Prout stepped into the high-stakes world of Hollywood with her casting as Abby Miller in Elektra, a role that served as her first major film credit and launched her into the spotlight. Prout, a Vancouver native with minor TV appearances under her belt, was scouted through traditional casting calls amid the production's relocation to British Columbia for tax incentives. Directors sought a fresh face to embody Abby, a precocious teen discovering latent ninja talents who could hold her own opposite Garner without overshadowing the lead. Prout's audition tape, showcasing her poise and subtle athleticism from competitive dance, clinched the part, marking a deliberate choice to inject youthful energy into the film's otherwise shadowy tone. Prout's preparation was as rigorous as any adult cast members, involving weeks of intensive martial arts training prior to principal photography. I underwent martial arts training a few weeks before filming to prepare for her ninja character, she revealed in a 2004 interview with North Shore News, emphasizing how the role transformed her from a very normal girl into a capable fighter. Under the guidance of the same choreographers who trained Garner, Prout mastered basic forms of wushu and staff combat, essential for Abby's climactic showdowns. The fight scenes, far from intimidating, fueled her determination. The fight scenes do not scare me, instead, they motivate me to push harder. This mindset resonated on set, where she bonded with Garner over shared stunt triggers, fostering a mentor-Prout copyright G8 copyright dynamic that mirrored their characters' relationship. Abby's arc from sheltered daughter to empowered warrior mirrored Prout's own journey, adding authenticity to her wide-eyed wonder and eventual ferocity. The casting of Prout was strategic, aiming to appeal to younger audiences while grounding Elektra's redemption narrative in generational continuity. Her performance, blending innocence with emerging strength, earned praise for avoiding cliché copyright as Abby isn't the damsel but a mirror to Elektra's past self. Post-Elektra, Prout's career surged with roles in the Chronicles of Riddick and Kyle Z, crediting the film as her sizable break. In retrospect, her selection highlighted 20th Century Fox's gamble on untapped talent, paying dividends in a film that, despite critical pans, cultivated a cult following for its underdog characters. Goran Visnjic's grounded portrayal of Mark Miller. Goran Visnjic brought a rare blend of European intensity and paternal warmth to Mark Miller, the single father targeted by the hand in Elektra. The Croatian actor, best known at the time for his Emmy-nominated turn as Dr. Luka Kovacs on Her, was cast after producers sought a leading man who could convey quiet resilience amid chaos. Visnjic's audition emphasized emotional depth over physicality, as Mark is no fighter but an everyman whose vulnerability heightens the stakes. His selection in early 2004 aligned with the film's post-Daredevil momentum, with Marvel aiming to diversify its ensemble beyond American stars. Visnjic's preparation focused on character immersion rather than combat training, drawing from his own experiences as a father to infuse Mark with authentic protectiveness. Around the same period, he vied for the role of James Bond in Casino Royale, a finalist status that underscored his rising global profile. Though he lost to Daniel Craig, the buzz likely aided his Elektra negotiations, positioning him as a sophisticated counterpoint to the film's martial arts frenzy. On set in Vancouver, Visnjic collaborated closely with Prout to build their father-daughter chemistry, improvising tender moments that softened the script's edges. His Mark isn't heroic in the traditional sense but heroic in his ordinariness, making Elektra's guardianship feel earned. The casting choice reflected a broader push for international appeal, with Visnjic's multilingual skills. He speaks 5 languages, adding nuance to scenes involving the hand's global threat. Critics noted how his subtle performance anchored the film's emotional core, preventing it from tipping into pure spectacle. Post-release, Visnjic reflected on the role as a welcome change from medical dramas, appreciating its exploration of legacy in loss, echoing his own wartime upbringing in the Balkans. Terence Stamp's enigmatic turn as Stick. Terence Stamp's embodiment of Stick, Elektra's blind mentor and the chaste's grizzled leader, injected philosophical gravitas into Elektra's whirlwind of action. The British veteran, with a resume spanning Superman and The Limey, was courted relentlessly by director Rob Bowman and producer Gary Foster. "I met those guys, and they were really nice and really smart, but I just couldn't see myself in the role, you know," Stamp admitted in a 2005 Movie Web interview, his initial reluctance rooted in portraying a blind character authentically. "The reluctance I had, really, was that I didn't feel that I could make a reality out of the linear version of Stick, who is blind, yet, the producer's persistence won out, seeing in Stamp's weathered charisma the perfect vessel for a benevolent but Machiavellian sage who pulls the strings." Preparation was innovative and sensory-driven. Stamp filmed initial scenes with eyes closed to sharpen his other senses, inspired by martial arts schools where students defend blindfolded attacks. "My idea was to play the whole movie with my eyes closed, and I'll force another kind of dimension of consciousness," he explained, noting how this heightened his awareness during fight choreography. He drew from G.I. Gurdjieff, a 1920s Russian mystic who sought to expand human consciousness through rigorous discipleship, a parallel to Stick's training of Elektra. This intellectual layering made Stamp's Stick more than a trope. He's a seer who resurrects the dead and glimpses futures, his gravelly voice delivering cryptic wisdom like, "You've got to learn to live with the demons before you can learn to control them." Stamp's casting was a coup. Leveraging his comic book pedigree, he voiced Jor-El in Superman, to lend credibility. On set, he mentored younger actors, his presence calming the wire-heavy stunts. "Having engaged with it, then yeah, I would be happy to do it again," he mused, open to sequels that never materialized. His performance, blending menace and mentorship, remains a highlight, elevating Elektra from B-movie fare to something philosophically textured. Will Yunli's commanding antagonist Kirigi. Will Yunli emerged as a formidable force as Kirigi, the hand's ruthless assassin and son of Rashi, bringing sleek lethality to Elektra's villainy. Lee's casting in mid-2004 capitalized on his rising action credentials from Die Another Day and Face Off, where he showcased martial prowess. Producers, seeking an Asian lead for the role to honor the character's comic origins, auditioned Lee for his ability to convey icy ambition. As Kirigi, the murderer of Elektra's mother, Lee channeled a predatory grace, his swordplay a whirlwind of precision honed through years of taekwondo and hapkido training. Preparation involved custom choreography with Wen Wu Ping, emphasizing Lee's agility in zero-gravity wire scenes. Kirigi was an ambitious ninja of the hand, as described in character analyses, his arc culminating in a brutal Psy vs. Katana duel with Elektra. Lee's background, born in South Korea, raised in the U.S.A, added cultural authenticity, allowing him to infuse Kirigi with a code of honor twisted by loyalty to the hand. On set, he sparred daily with Garner, building mutual respect that translated to on-screen tension. The decision to cast Lee diversified the ensemble, countering early 2000s Hollywood's whitewashing tendencies. His performance, marked by minimal dialogue and maximum menace, drew comparisons to Jet Li's hero antagonists. Post-Elektra, Lee's career exploded with Wolverine and Mortal Kombat, but Kirigi remains his breakout villain, a testament to targeted casting and genre fare. Hiroyuki Tagawa's authoritative Rashi. Hiroyuki Tagawa's Rashi, the enigmatic overlord of the hand, embodied ancient menace with a modern edge, his casting announced in May 2004 as a key piece in Elektra's puzzle. Known for Mortal Kombat's Shanks, Tagawa was chosen for his commanding presence and familiarity with mystical warriors. Tagawa portrays Rashi, the leader of the ninja group The Hand, confirmed IGN sources, positioning him as the film's shadowy patriarch. His audition focused on vocal timbre, delivering lines with a hypnotic cadence that evoked forbidden knowledge. Tagawa's preparation delved into Japanese folklore, blending Shinto mysticism with comic lore to craft Roshi's resurrection rituals. Training was light on physicality. He relied on doubles for flips but heavy on improvisation, ad-libbing taunts that deepened his rivalry with Stamp's stick. As a Japanese-American veteran, Tagawa advocated for respectful depiction of ninjutsu, influencing costume designs with authentic Kobe sashes. Casting Tagawa was a nod to genre continuity, his villainous charisma echoing Rising Sunday. His Roshi, with eyes like polished obsidian, anchored the antagonists, making the hand feel like a tangible cult. The role reinforced Tagawa's typecast as wise but wicked, paving paths to memoirs of a geisha and beyond. Natasimald's sultry Typhoid Mary. Natasimald slithered into Elektra as Typhoid Mary, the pyrokinetic seductress whose telepathic wiles challenge Elektra's resolve. An Norwegian model-turned-actress, Maud was cast in 2004 for her exotic allure and dance-honed flexibility, ideal for Typhoid's fluid combat style. "You know, I used to be the treasure and I don't like being replaced," her character hisses, a line Maud delivered with venomous poise. Preparation included fire manipulation classes and hypnotherapy to tape into Typhoid's manipulative psyche, drawing from the comic's bipolar assassin. Maud's ballet background shone in silk-robed fights, her chemistry with Garner sparking electric tension. Casting her diversified the female villains, moving beyond stereotypes to a multifaceted femme fatale. Maud's post-Elektra trajectory included DOA, Dead or Alive, rumored early from set buzz. Typhoid remains her signature, a fiery foil that added erratic intrigue to the film's stakes. The ensemble's supporting pillars, Bob Sapp, Colin Cunningham, and beyond Bob Sapp's brute force as Stone, the tattooed powerhouse of the hand, brought raw physicality to Elektra's rogues gallery. A former NFL player and K1 kickboxer, Sapp was cast for his 6'5" frame and imposing musculature, requiring minimal acting coaching but extensive padding for impacts. His scenes, like the warehouse brawl, showcased Sapp's real athleticism, grunting through chain whip takedowns that tested Garner's resilience. Colin Cunningham's McCabe, Elektra's sardonic handler, added levity with his everyman sarcasm. Cast from Vancouver theatre circuits, Cunningham's preparation involved dialect work to nail the grizzled fixer vibe. His banter with Garner provided rare humor, a deliberate choice to balance the film's gloom. Mark Hildreth voiced Ray Connolly, a minor informant, his casting leveraging his Death Note anime cred for subtle madness. Hiro Kanagawa's Mizumi, a hand treasurer, drew from his Smallville experience, infusing quiet dignity. Chris Gaudier, Ty Olsson, and Hrothgar Matthews filled thug role. Lessa Emerson, Sullivan, who will play out with local talent, their ensemble work fleshing out the hand's expendable ranks. These supporting players, often cast via open calls, embodied the film's blue-collar ethos, their authenticity grounding the supernatural elements. Minor roles in the art of ensemble filling deeper into Elektra's credits, roles like Ed Soni's Kinku Warrior and David Murray's Parash Assassin highlight the meticulous casting of ninjas. Sony, a martial artist, was selected for fluid kendo. Murray for brooding intensity. Laura Ward's young Elektra flashback was a child actor pick emphasizing vulnerability, her brief scenes pivotal for backstory. Extras and stunt performers, numbering over 200, were sourced from Vancouver's fight community, with coordinators like Army Guberman ensuring diversity in ethnicity and build to reflect the hand's global cult. This granular approach, under casting director Corinne Mayers, created a lived-in world, where every blade wielder felt integral. Casting strategy, balancing spectacle and substance. The Elektra casting team, led by Mayers and Marvel's Avi Arad, prioritized synergy over star power. Early rumors in 2002 focused on the Daredevil spin-off's Elektra lead, with Garner locked in amid fan debates. Decisions favored actors with physical chops and emotional range, like VIA ring inverted exclamation mark Gia's paternal anchor contrasting Lee's sleek villainy. Diversity was intentional. Asian leads for hand members honored comics, while Prout's youth broadened appeal. Challenges included Garner's alias schedule, limiting shoots to her hiatus, and Stamp's blindness portrayal, solved through innovative techniques. Budget constraints favored practical casting, yielding a $43 million production that punched above its weight. Ultimately, these choices crafted a film whose cast, though uneven, delivered memorable clashes, from side duels to mentor monologues, cementing Elektra's place in early superhero cinema. Production development and pre-production. The journey to bring Elektra to the big screen began long before the 2005 release, with roots stretching back to 1987. Following the success of Frank Miller's critically acclaimed graphic novel Elektra, Assassin, Marvel Comics recognized the potential for a live-action adaptation and sought to capitalize on the character's popularity. The studio sold the film rights to New Line Cinema, and Frank Miller himself was brought on board to pen a screenplay based on his own graphic novel. This initial attempt represented a genuine effort to translate the dark, complex narrative of the source material into a cinematic experience that would honor the character's rich mythology. However, the development process proved to be far more complicated than anticipated. After Miller's initial screenplay draft, New Line Cinema decided to bring in additional writers to refine and reshape the story. Screenwriters Jim McBride and L.M. Kit Carson were hired to craft a second script, suggesting that the studio was searching for a different approach to the material. The project began to gain significant momentum when renowned director Oliver Stone expressed interest in helming the film. Stone's involvement brought considerable prestige to the project, and he had a specific vision for who should embody the fierce assassin on screen. He wanted volleyball player, model, and actress Gabrielle Reese to take on the role of Elektra, envisioning her athletic prowess and physical presence as ideal for the character. Despite these ambitious plans and the involvement of high-profile talent, the project ultimately stalled at New Line Cinema. The rights to Elektra changed hands once again, this time being sold to 20th Century Fox. This transition effectively ended the initial development phase, and the project would remain dormant for years before being revived in a completely different context. The version of Elektra that eventually made it to theaters emerged from an entirely different set of circumstances. Following the release of Daredevil in 2003, which featured Jennifer Garner in a supporting role as Elektra Natchios, the character's popularity and Garner's performance sparked interest in a spin-off film. However, the origins of this project were far from straightforward or entirely voluntary for its lead actress. Jennifer Garner has been candid about her reluctance to star in the film, revealing that she participated primarily because of contractual obligations stemming from her work on Daredevil. This revelation cast a shadow over the production from the outset, as the star herself was not enthusiastically committed to the project. The timing of the production was heavily constrained by Garner's schedule. At the time, she was starring in the hit television series Alias, and the film had to be made during her hiatus from the show. This scheduling limitation created significant pressure on the production timeline, forcing the filmmakers to work within a compressed time frame that would ultimately impact various aspects of the film's development, filming, and post-production processes. The production team had to carefully coordinate every phase of filmmaking to accommodate Garner's limited availability. For the screenplay, 3 writers received written by credit: Zach Penn, Stuart Zeicherman, and M. Raven Metzner. Their task was to create a narrative that could stand alone while also serving as a continuation of Elektra's story from Daredevil. Additionally, Mark Steven Johnson received credit for creating the motion picture characters, acknowledging his role in establishing the cinematic version of those characters in Daredevil, while Frank Miller received recognition for the comic book characters, honoring his foundational work in creating and defining Elektra in the Marvel Comics universe. Director Rob Bowman was brought on to helm the project, and he entered the production with a clear understanding of the challenges that lay ahead. Bowman recognized from the beginning that the production timeline would be significantly compressed and that resources would be limited. The film's budget was set at approximately $43 million, which was relatively modest for a superhero film even by 2004 standards. This budgetary constraint meant that Bowman and his team would need to be creative and efficient in their approach to filmmaking, maximizing every dollar spent to create a visually compelling and action-packed movie. Despite these limitations, Bauman maintained an optimistic outlook and believed that critics would appreciate the achievement of what he and his team were able to accomplish with the resources available. He approached the project not as a massive action spectacle designed to compete with bigger-budget superhero films, but rather as a more intimate character study. In Bauman's vision, Elektra was fundamentally a story about a character learning about compassion, emphasizing the emotional and psychological journey of the protagonist rather than relying solely on elaborate action sequences and special effects. An interesting element of the pre-production phase involved the decision to include Ben Affleck in a cameo appearance. Affleck, who had portrayed Matt Murdock, also known as Daredevil, in the 2003 film, agreed to reprise his role for what was planned as a dream sequence in Elektra. This cameo was intended to provide a direct link between the two films and offer fans a sense of continuity in the Marvel film universe that was being developed at the time. The inclusion of the scene demonstrated an effort to maintain narrative cohesion and acknowledge the shared history between the characters, even though Elektra was designed to function as a standalone film. The pre-production phase also involved extensive work on the visual design and aesthetic of the film. The creative team needed to develop the look of the Hand, the villainous organization that would serve as the primary antagonists. This included designing the unique abilities and visual signatures of characters like Typhoid, Stone, Kenku, Tattoo, and Kirigi. Each of these assassins required distinctive visual elements that would make them memorable and threatening while also being achievable within the film's budget constraints. The design team worked to create a visual language that would blend martial arts mythology with supernatural elements, drawing inspiration from both Eastern philosophy and Western action cinema. Filming principal photography for Elektra commenced in May 2004, with Vancouver, Canada, serving as the primary filming location. The choice of Vancouver was both practical and economic, as the city had become a popular filming destination for Hollywood productions due to its diverse landscapes, established film infrastructure, and favorable exchange rates. Vancouver's versatility allowed the production team to create various settings needed for the film, from urban environments to natural landscapes that could serve as the island setting central to the story. The filming process was intense and demanding for everyone involved, but particularly for the director and lead actress. Rob Bowman's days on set were extraordinarily long, often leaving him with as little as 4 hours of sleep per night. This grueling schedule was a direct result of the compressed production timeline imposed by Jennifer Garner's limited availability due to her commitments to Alias. Every day of shooting had to be meticulously planned and executed with maximum efficiency to ensure that all necessary footage could be captured within the allotted timeframe. Bauman later reflected on the challenges of the filming process, acknowledging that he utilized every trick in the book to complete the movie within the constrained schedule. This statement speaks to the resourcefulness and adaptability required of the director and his team. They had to make quick decisions, often on the fly, about camera angles, shot composition, and scene staging. The pressure to maintain the shooting schedule while still achieving high-quality footage meant that there was little room for error or extensive experimentation. Takes had to be limited, setups had to be efficient, and the entire production had to operate like a well-oiled machine. For Jennifer Garner, the physical demands of the role were considerable. Having already portrayed Elektra in Daredevil, she had some familiarity with the character's fighting style and physical requirements. However, this film placed her front and center for the entire narrative, requiring extensive action sequences, wire work, and martial arts choreography. Garner underwent rigorous physical training to prepare for the role, working with stunt coordinators and martial arts experts to ensure that her movements appeared fluid and authentic. The actress had to perform many of her own stunts, which added to the physical toll of the already demanding shooting schedule. The action sequences required careful choreography and multiple takes to capture the desired intensity and visual style. The film featured several elaborate fight scenes, including Elektra's confrontations with the various assassins from the Hand. These sequences needed to be both visually striking and narratively significant, showing Elektra's superior skills while also revealing her emotional state and character development. The wire work, in particular, was challenging, as it required Garner to perform acrobatic movements while suspended in the air, often for extended periods between takes as cameras and lighting were adjusted. One of the unique visual elements of the film was the depiction of Elektra's precognitive abilities, granted through her training in Camagüey. Filming these sequences required innovative camera work and visual effects planning. The production team had to shoot scenes multiple times from different angles to capture both the present action and the future visions that Elektra experiences. This added another layer of complexity to an already challenging production schedule, as each precognitive sequence essentially doubled the amount of footage that needed to be captured. The Vancouver locations provided diverse settings for the film's various scenes. The island setting where Elektra awaits her assignment required finding locations that could convincingly portray an isolated, atmospheric environment. The forest sequences, where much of the climactic action takes place, took advantage of British Columbia's lush natural landscapes. These outdoor shoots presented their own challenges, including weather conditions, natural lighting variations, and the logistics of transporting equipment and crew to remote locations. The film's production design team worked diligently to create the visual world of Elektra, including the headquarters of the Hand and the various locations where action sequences would unfold. Given the budget constraints, the team had to be creative in their approach, using practical effects and clever camera work to create the impression of larger, more elaborate sets. The emphasis was on creating atmospheric, moody environments that would enhance the film's darker tone and complement the character-driven narrative that Bowman envisioned. The shooting of Ben Affleck's cameo scene was accomplished during the production phase, even though it would ultimately be cut from the theatrical release. This scene involved recreating elements from Daredevil and required coordination between the two films' visual styles. The fact that this scene was shot but later removed speaks to the difficult editorial decisions that would be made during post-production, as the filmmakers struggled to find the right balance and pacing for the film. Throughout the filming process, Bowman and his team faced the constant challenge of balancing artistic vision with practical limitations. Every creative decision had to be weighed against the realities of time and budget. The director's experience working on television projects, including episodes of The X-Files, proved valuable in this environment, as he was accustomed to working efficiently under tight constraints. However, the scope and scale of a feature film presented unique challenges that required adaptation and innovation at every turn. The cinematography team, led by the film's director of photography, worked to establish a distinct visual style that would set Elektra apart from other superhero films of the era. The lighting design emphasized shadows and contrast, creating a more influenced aesthetic that reflected the character's dark history and moral ambiguity. Action sequences were shot with dynamic camera movements and quick cuts to convey the speed and intensity of Elektra's combat skills, while more intimate character moments utilized longer takes and closer framing to emphasize emotional depth. Post-production. Following the completion of principal photography, Elektra entered the post-production phase, where the raw footage would be transformed into a finished film. This stage of production proved to be just as challenging and time-constrained as the filming itself. The editing team faced the daunting task of assembling the movie within a compressed timeline, while also working to address some of the structural and narrative issues that had emerged during production. One of the most significant challenges during post-production involved dealing with the Motion Picture Association of America's ratings board. Rob Bowman later revealed that the film was literally 12 frames of film from an R rating due to objections raised by the MPA regarding several death scenes. This revelation provides insight into the delicate balancing act required to create an action film that featured violence and death while still maintaining a PG-13 rating that would allow for a broader audience. The filmmakers had to carefully trim and edit specific moments to satisfy the ratings board's concerns. The process of removing those crucial frames demonstrates the precision required in modern film editing. 12 frames of film represent merely a half-second of screen time, yet this minuscule amount of footage stood between Elektra receiving a PG-13 rating versus an R rating. The editorial team had to identify exactly which frames contained the objectionable content and remove them without disrupting the visual flow or narrative coherence of the scenes in question. This likely involved shortening shots of violent impacts, removing frames that showed graphic detail of injuries, or trimming moments where weapons made contact with characters. Beyond the ratings concerns, the post-production team worked extensively on the film's visual effects. While Elektra did not rely as heavily on computer-generated imagery as some other superhero films of the era, it still required substantial VFX work to bring certain elements to life. The supernatural abilities of the Hands assassins needed to be realized through a combination of practical effects and digital enhancement. Tattoo's ability to animate his tattoos and transform them into living creatures was one of the most effects-intensive elements of the film. Kinko's super speed required careful work in post-production to create the visual effect of his rapid movements while maintaining clarity and impact in the action sequences. The precognitive visions that represented Elektra's use of camera gear also required sophisticated post-production work. These sequences needed to be visually distinct from the present action while still feeling integrated into the film's overall aesthetic. The editorial and effects teams likely experimented with various approaches, including color grading, visual overlays, and motion effects to create a signature look for these moments that would clearly signal to the audience when they were seeing Elektra's visions of the future. Sound design and audio post-production represented another crucial element in creating the film's atmosphere and impact. The combat sequences required detailed sound work to ensure that every strike, movement, and weapon clash felt powerful and visceral. The supernatural elements of the story also demanded creative sound design to accompany the visual effects. The audio team worked to create distinctive sound signatures for each of the Hands assassins, helping to establish their unique characteristics and threats through oral as well as visual means. The film score, composed by Christoph Beck, was integrated during post-production. Beck's music needed to support the film's dramatic and action-heavy narrative while also providing emotional depth for Elektra's character journey. The score had to work in tandem with the editing and pacing of the film, enhancing key moments without overwhelming the performances or dialogue. Post-production involved the careful mixing and balancing of music, dialogue, sound effects, and ambient sound to create a cohesive audio experience. One of the most significant editorial decisions made during post-production was the removal of Ben Affleck's cameo appearance as Matt Murdock, Daredevil. Despite the time and resources invested in filming the scene, that decision was made that it did not serve the final version of the film. This choice may have been driven by various factors, including concerns about pacing, narrative focus, or the desire to establish Elektra as a standalone character rather than relying on her connection to Daredevil. The removal of this scene, while potentially disappointing to some fans hoping for continuity between the films, demonstrates the difficult choices that filmmakers must make in service of the final product. The editing process involved not just the assembly of scenes but also the refinement of the film's overall structure and pacing. The team had to ensure that the narrative flowed logically from Elektra's initial assignment through her decision to protect Mark and Abby, the escalating conflict with the Hand, and the final confrontation with Kirigi. This required careful attention to rhythm, building tension appropriately while also allowing moments for character development and emotional resonance. Color grading and color correction formed another essential aspect of post-production. The cinematography team's work on set provided the foundation, but the final look of the film was refined and perfected in post-production. The decision to emphasize darker tones and moody lighting needed to be maintained consistently throughout the film while also ensuring that action sequences remain visually clear and comprehensible. Different scenes required different color treatments to establish mood and setting, from the cold, isolated atmosphere of the island location to the warmer tones of Mark's home. The post-production timeline was undoubtedly influenced by the film's planned release date of January 14, 2005. Working backward from this fixed date, the post-production team had to complete all editing, visual effects, sound design, and final mixing within a specific timeframe. This likely meant that certain aspects of post-production were being worked on simultaneously rather than sequentially, with different teams handling various elements in parallel to meet the deadline. Title design and opening credits also received attention during post-production, as these elements set the tone for the audience's experience. The filmmakers needed to create an opening sequence that would establish the film's mood and style while also providing necessary information about the cast and crew. This required coordination between graphic designers, the editorial team, and possibly visual effects artists to create the title sequence that felt integrated with the film's overall aesthetic. The preview process, involving test screenings with audiences, may have led to additional editorial changes during post-production. Studios typically use these screenings to gauge audience reaction and identify elements that are confusing, slow-paced, or otherwise problematic. Based on feedback from these screenings, additional edits might have been made to improve clarity, pacing, or emotional impact. However, the compressed timeline may have limited the opportunity for extensive re-editing based on test audience feedback. The creation of multiple versions of the film for different formats and markets also occurred during post-production. Beyond the theatrical version, the team had to prepare versions for different rating requirements in international markets, create materials for marketing and promotional purposes, and potentially begin work on what would eventually become the director's cut for home video release. Each of these versions required separate attention and quality control to ensure that they meet the necessary technical and content specifications. Throughout the post-production process, Rob Bowman and his team continued to face the challenge of maximizing the impact of their limited resources. Every decision about effects work, editorial choices, and technical refinements had to be made with an awareness of budgetary constraints and time limitations. The goal was to deliver a polished, professional superhero film that could compete in the marketplace while acknowledging the inherent limitations under which it was created. The musical landscape of Elektra consisted of two distinct components: the commercial soundtrack album featuring contemporary artists and the original orchestral score composed by Christoph Beck. Each served different purposes and contributed to the film's overall identity in different ways, though the relationships between the soundtrack album and the actual film proved to be more complex than typical movie soundtracks. Elektra, the album, was released in 2005 by Wind Up Records, a label known for releasing soundtracks that often had tenuous connections to the films they were ostensibly promoting. This pattern held true for Elektra, as the relationships between the soundtrack and the film was somewhat disconnected. Despite the album being marketed as the official soundtrack for the movie, the vast majority of songs featured on the album were not actually used in the film itself. This approach represented a common practice in the music industry during this era, where soundtrack albums sometimes functioned more as compilation albums featuring artists from a particular label rather than genuine representations of the music heard in the films. Of all the tracks included on Elektra, the album, only 4 actually appeared in the movie. Sooner or Later was the only song to be featured during the body of the film. The other 3 songs that made it into the movie, Wonder, Photograph, and 1,000 Mile Wish, Elektra Mixtape, were all relegated to the end credits sequence. This limited integration meant that audiences watching the film would hear virtually none of the music promoted on the official soundtrack album during their viewing experience. An interesting footnote in the soundtrack's history involves the song Hollow by Submersed. An all-LED remix of this track was actually featured in the film, providing one of the rare instances where a wind-up artist's music was integrated into the movie itself. However, the soundtrack album featured the original version of Hollow rather than the all-LED remix that audiences would have heard in theaters. Adding to this peculiarity, the all-LED remix has remained unreleased to this day, making it a piece of lost media from the film's production that fans cannot access through official channels. The album contained a mixture of previously released material and new content. Several songs by artists on the Wind Up roster originally appeared on their respective previous albums and were simply compiled for this release. However, alongside these previously available tracks, the album also featured some original content. Songs specifically created for the project or tracks that debuted on this album before being included in artists' later releases provided some genuine new material for fans of the participating musicians. Tracks such as Never There, She Stabs, Hey Kids, Sooner or Later, Breathe No More, Photograph, and the original version of Hollow represented the core of recognizable content, while other contributions represented newer material from the featured artists. The artists featured on the album represented Wind Up Records' roster at the time, including Finger Eleven, 12 Stones, Evanescence, Submersed, Seether, Hailstorm, Lifehouse, Low Pro, People in Planes, and The Exis. The track listing attempted to create a cohesive listening experience despite the songs not being integrated into the film, with the darker, more aggressive rock tracks reflecting the film's action-oriented and serious tone. The album functioned more as a marketing tool and a way to promote Wind Up Records artists than as a genuine film soundtrack in the traditional sense. AllMusic reviewed the soundtrack album, providing critical assessment of the compilation as a standalone music product. While the specific rating and detailed comments from the review highlighted various aspects of the album's quality and cohesion, the review had to be understood in the context that this was more of a compilation album than a true soundtrack experience. In contrast to the commercial soundtrack album, a separate score album was released by Varetilda Se Saraband, a label specializing in film music and orchestral soundtracks. This release contains selections from Christoph Beck's original score for Elektra, representing the actual music that underscored the majority of the film. Beck's score had the challenging task of supporting the film's action sequences, emotional moments, and supernatural elements while establishing a distinctive musical identity for Elektra as a character. Christoph Beck approached the score with an understanding that the music needed to reflect multiple aspects of Elektra's character and journey. The score had to convey her skills as an assassin, her internal struggle with her traumatic past, her gradual opening to compassion and connection with Mark and Abby, and her supernatural abilities granted through her training in Kumagure. This required a musical palette that could move between aggressive, percussive action themes, more introspective and melancholic passages for character development, and mysterious, otherworldly motifs for the supernatural elements. The orchestral score drew on various musical influences and stylistic elements. The action sequences benefited from driving, rhythmic compositions that emphasized percussion and aggressive string work to match the intensity of the fight choreography. The use of Eastern musical influences and instrumentation helped to ground the score in the martial arts traditions central to the story while also providing an exotic flavor that distinguished Elektra from other Western superhero films. Traditional Eastern instruments might have been incorporated or emulated through Western orchestral means to create textures that evoke the philosophy and mysticism underlying Elektra's training and abilities. For the more intimate character moments, Beck's score employed more traditional orchestral techniques, utilizing strings and woodwinds to create emotional depth. Elektra's relationship with Mark and her protective feelings toward Abby required musical support that could convey vulnerability and growing emotional connection, contrasting with the harder-edged themes associated with her work as an assassin. The score had to track Elektra's character development, subtly shifting in tone as she moved from isolation toward compassion and self-sacrifice. The supernatural elements of the story presented unique challenges for the composer. The Hand and its various assassins, each with their own distinctive abilities, required musical characterization. Kirigi, as the primary antagonist and the demon from Elektra's past, needed a threatening and memorable theme. Typhoid's ability to kill with a kiss, Tattoo's animated ink, and Stone's brute strength all benefited from distinctive musical signatures that helped establish these characters as formidable threats. The precognitive visions granted by Kumagure also needed musical support that would signal to the audience when these glimpses of the future were occurring. The score album released by Varetilda Se Saraband allowed film music enthusiasts to experience Beck's work in a more focused way than the commercial soundtrack album permitted. While film scores are always edited and rearranged for soundtrack releases, removing ambient music, restructuring themes that were fragmented throughout the film, and selecting highlights rather than including every note written for the movie of the score album provided a true representation of the music actually heard during the theatrical experience of watching Elektra. The liner notes accompanying the score album release typically provide valuable information about the composer's approach, the recording process, and the creative decisions that shaped the final score. These materials offer insight into how Beck collaborated with director Rob Bowman to ensure that the music served the director's vision while also functioning as compelling listening on its own terms. The recording sessions, likely conducted with a full orchestra, represented a significant portion of the film's budget dedicated to creating a professional, polished sound that could compete with other major studio releases. The dual nature of Elektra's musical release as the disconnected commercial soundtrack and the authentic score album reflects the complex business relationships and marketing strategies that often surround major film releases. While fans seeking the actual music from the film would find satisfaction in the Varietilda Diaris's Say Saraband score release, those attracted by the wind-up records artists featured on the commercial soundtrack would discover only a marginal connection to the film itself. This division represents a missed opportunity for synergy between the film and its musical representation, though such disconnects were not uncommon in Hollywood film production during this era. Released theatrical, Elektra made its theatrical debut on January 14, 2005. Opening wide across the United States in 3,204 theaters. This release date positioned the film in a traditionally quieter period of the movie calendar, following the lucrative holiday season but preceding the spring and summer blockbuster corridor. January releases often face lower audience expectations and reduced competition, which can benefit smaller films but also signal that studios have limited confidence in a movie's commercial potential. For a superhero film based on a Marvel Comics character, particularly one featuring a female lead, the January release date sent a subtle message about the studio's assessment of the film's prospects. The choice of release date may have been influenced by several factors beyond typical strategic positioning. The compressed production timeline, dictated by Jennifer Garner's television schedule, meant that the film needed to be completed within a specific window. Post-production requirements and the time necessary for visual effects work, sound design, and final editing all had to be factored into determining when the film could realistically be ready for release. Rather than rush to meet a more prestigious release date or delay the film significantly, the January 2005 window may have represented the earliest realistic opportunity to bring Elektra to theaters while ensuring adequate time for completion. The wide release across more than 3,000 theaters demonstrated that 20th Century Fox and its distribution partners had faith in this film's ability to attract audiences nationwide. This breadth of distribution required significant marketing and promotional efforts to ensure that potential viewers were aware of the film and motivated to purchase tickets. Marketing campaigns would have included television commercials, print advertising, online promotion, and potentially promotional tie-ins with various products or brands. Jennifer Garner's star power, bolstered by her success on Alias and her work in films like 13 Going on 30, represented a key selling point in attracting audiences who might not typically attend superhero films. The film's opening weekend proved disappointing relative to expectations and needs. Elektra ranked 5th at the box office during its debut, earning $12,804,793. While this figure represented a reasonable sum in absolute terms, it fell short of what would be required for the film to be considered a commercial success given its production budget and marketing expenses. The 5th place ranking indicated that audiences were opting for other options in theaters, and the film failed to generate the kind of excitement or word of mouth that drives strong opening weekends. In examining the competition during that opening weekend, Elektra faced off against a variety of films appealing to different demographics, without dominant blockbuster competition that might have been expected during other parts of the year. The film's 5th place finish was particularly concerning. It suggested that even without overwhelming competition for the action-adventure audience, Elektra struggled to attract viewers. The superhero genre was entering a period of growth and renewed popularity, with films like Spider-Man and X-Men having demonstrated the commercial viability of comic book adaptations. Yet Elektra failed to capitalize on this momentum. The second weekend told an even grimmer story about the film's commercial trajectory. In its sophomore weekend, Elektra took in just $3,964,598, representing a catastrophic drop of 69% from its opening weekend gross. Such dramatic week-to-week declines typically indicate poor word of mouth, as audiences who saw the film during its opening days failed to recommend it to friends and family. This kind of drop-off suggests that even the film's core audience are fans of the character, admirers of Jennifer Garner, or general superhero movie enthusiasts were not sufficiently satisfied to drive additional business through positive recommendations. The 69% drop in the second weekend effectively ended any hopes that Elektra might find an audience through legs and sustained performance. Films that succeed commercially despite modest openings typically do so by maintaining audience interest over multiple weeks, sometimes even increasing their weekend grosses through positive word of mouth. Elektra demonstrated the opposite pattern, losing the majority of its audience almost immediately and continuing to decline precipitously in subsequent weeks. This pattern of rapid decline is characteristic of films that fail to meet audience expectations or generate enthusiasm among those who do see them. By the end of its domestic theatrical run, Elektra had accumulated a total gross of $24,409,722 in the United States and Canada. This figure represented a significant shortfall against the film's reported production budget of $43 million, not accounting for the additional costs of marketing, distribution, and exhibition. Using the traditional rule of thumb that a film needs to gross approximately 2 to 3 times its production budget to break even, accounting for marketing costs and the percentage of ticket sales retained by theaters, Elektra fell dramatically short of profitability in its domestic release. The domestic gross was particularly notable when compared to other Marvel Comics adaptations of the era. At the time of its release, Elektra registered the lowest domestic box office total for a film featuring a Marvel Comics character since Howard the Duck, the notorious 1986 commercial and critical failure. This comparison placed Elektra in unfortunate company and highlighted just how severe its commercial underperformance was. While not every superhero film could be expected to match the success of Spider-Man or X-Men, the genre had established a baseline level of commercial performance that Elektra failed to reach. The film's international performance provided some relief to the overall financial picture, though not enough to transform the film into a success. The worldwide total gross reached $56,681,566, meaning that international markets contributed approximately $32 million to the film's overall take. While international revenue represented a significant portion of the total, it still left the film well short of the break-even point when accounting for all costs associated with production, marketing, and distribution across multiple territories. International release patterns and performance can vary significantly from domestic results, with different markets responding to films based on local tastes, marketing effectiveness, and the popularity of particular stars or genre. Jennifer Garner's international profile, while boosted by Alias and her film work, may not have been as strong as in the United States, potentially limiting the film's appeal in foreign markets. Additionally, the film's narrative focus on Eastern martial arts philosophy and mythology might have played differently in various international markets, potentially resonating more strongly in some Asian markets while facing challenges in others. The theatrical release of Elektra, viewed in its entirety, represented a commercial failure that had implications beyond just the immediate financial losses. The film's poor performance raised questions about the viability of female-led superhero films, a topic that would generate discussion and debate within the industry for years to come. It also highlighted the risks of rushing productions to meet contractual obligations or scheduling windows rather than allowing adequate time for development and production. The January release date, which might have been seen as a strategic choice, ultimately positioned the film in a way that seemed to acknowledge limited confidence in its commercial potential. Critics and industry observers noted that Elektra's theatrical release represented a missed opportunity to expand the superhero genre and demonstrate the commercial viability of diverse stories within the comic book adaptation space. The film's failure at the box office contributed to a reluctance among studios to greenlight similar projects, particularly those featuring female protagonists. For nearly a decade, this impact on the industry landscape extended far beyond the immediate financial results, shaping decision-making about which projects received funding and support. Home media. Following its disappointing theatrical run, Elektra transitioned to home video, where it would have multiple opportunities to find audiences and generate additional revenue. The home media releases of Elektra tell an interesting story about the film's post-theatrical life and the efforts made to provide fans with different versions and supplementary materials that might enhance appreciation for the movie. The initial DVD release of Elektra arrived on April 5, 2005. Less than 3 months after the film left theaters. This relatively quick turnaround from theatrical to home video was typical for films that underperformed at the box office, as studios sought to capitalize on whatever marketing awareness remained from the theatrical release while also cutting losses by moving quickly to the home video market where profit margins could be more favorable. The swift release to DVD also served to minimize the window during which the film might be forgotten entirely, attempting to capture whatever audience might have skipped the theatrical release but retained curiosity about the film. The standard DVD release came with several appealing features designed to provide value to purchasers and fans. Most notably, it included several deleted scenes that had been cut from the theatrical version. These deleted scenes offered viewers insight into elements of the story, character development, or action sequences that had been removed during the editing process. For fans of the film or those curious about what might have been, these deleted scenes provided additional context and material to explore. The most significant deleted scene featured on this initial DVD release was Ben Affleck's cameo appearance as Matt Murdock, Daredevil. This scene had been completely removed from the theatrical cut, and its inclusion on the DVD gave fans their only opportunity to see this connection between Elektra and its predecessor, Daredevil. The scene reportedly took the form of a dream sequence, allowing Affleck to appear without requiring extensive narrative explanation or disrupting the standalone nature of Elektra's story. For viewers who had enjoyed Daredevil or who appreciated continuity between related films, this deleted scene represented a valuable bonus feature that acknowledged the shared universe these films ostensibly inhabited. Beyond deleted scenes, the standard DVD likely included other supplementary materials common to home video releases of the era, such as behind-the-scenes featurettes, interviews with cast and crew, and possibly commentary tracks. These materials served multiple purposes, providing entertainment value for viewers who had purchased the DVD, offering promotional material that might encourage sales, and creating an archival record of the production process for those interested in filmmaking. The film was also released on VHS in May 2005, representing one of the later major film releases to receive a VHS version. By 2005, DVD had firmly established itself as the dominant home video format, and VHS releases were becoming increasingly rare. The decision to release Elektra on VHS likely reflected an effort to capture the remaining market of consumers who had not yet transitioned to DVD players. Though the segment was shrinking rapidly, the VHS release probably lacked many of the supplementary features found on the DVD, as the format's limitations made it difficult. Reviews in Facts number 1 after the middling success of Daredevil in 2003, I'm not quite sure exactly who was clamoring for a full feature on Elektra. The character had appeared in Daredevil opposite Ben Affleck, with Jennifer Garner providing a sexy, tough and rumble portrayal of the iconic Marvel assassin, yet it was a critical point in that movie that the character seemed lost on the periphery. Still, there's no accounting for Hollywood wanting to see a hot actress dressed in red leather strutting about with a pair of scythes, doing untold damage to all manner of henchmen and other bad guys. Elektra's release was met with scathing critical reviews, and in the end only barely made its production budget back thanks to a lackluster box office return. Considering how successful comic book films were back at that point, in the original X-Men heyday, it's a surprise that the film wasn't at least a financial success, even if it wasn't impressive to the critics. Is Elektra really that bad? How badly could Fox screw up one of Marvel's most famous female characters to the point that it killed off any chance of a sequel, including a continuation of Daredevil as well? Plot synopsis courtesy Wikipedia. After being killed in Daredevil, Elektra Natchios, Jennifer Garner, is revived by a blind martial arts master called Terrence Stamp. She is brought to his training compound to learn Kung Fu, an ancient martial arts discipline that provides its practitioners with precognition as well as the ability to resurrect the dead. Elektra is soon expelled because of her inability to let go of her rage. She leaves and uses her training to become a contract killer. Years later, Elektra infiltrates a heavily guarded area, kills the guards, and manages to slay her target Marco, Jason Isaacs. Elektra's agent, McCabe, Colin Cunningham, receives an unusually large offer from an anonymous client wishing to hire Elektra's services. The only stipulation, she must spend a few days in a rented home on the island where the assassination is to be performed before the names of the targets are revealed. During the wait, Elektra meets a girl, Abby, Kirsten Prout, who tried to swipe Elektra's necklace and Elektra sends her away. Elektra also meets, and befriends, Abby's father Mark Miller, Goran Visnjic. Later, Elektra learns that Mark and Abby are the targets she has been hired to kill. Elektra spares them and leaves, but later returns to protect them from assassins sent by the Hand, a crime syndicate of ninja mercenaries. I thought Jennifer Garner's Elektra was one of the better parts of Ben Affleck's Daredevil, even though she was horribly underused and felt more like a walking, talking prop than an actual character. Like most, I was excited to see her given her own feature, although tempered by the fact that it was a spin-off and thus, the narrative would follow the setup and tone from the Daredevil film. Directed by Star Trek, TNG producer Rob Bowman, who also gave us massive blockbusters like the first X-Files movie, and the dire Christian Bale Dragon film, Reign of Fire. I watched that recently, and it has not held up well. Elektra is a problematic feature film that cannot escape its inadequate direction, nor its inherently inane scripting. Whether it's a horrible film overall, however, is probably a point for the fanboys to continue arguing about. As a character, Elektra's parental issues and tragic childhood fascinated me. Her mother died when she was a child, and her father, here played as a younger man by Kurt Maxrunt, after Eric Avari essayed the role in Daredevil, was hellbent on preparing his daughter for a life of punishing lessons, and the main one depicted here being forcing the girl to tread water using only her legs for minutes, perhaps hours, at a time. Obviously, anybody who becomes an assassin has a few personal issues, and where I thought Elektra might have given us something more than we saw in Daredevil, Rob Bowman and his team completely dropped the ball. Elektra becomes just another tortured soul, a character born of some personal tragedy that fails utterly to register as anything but simplistic genre cliché. Bowman's flashbang editing style during moments of great import leave Elektra's backstory, told in flashback, of course, as hollow, empty scenes that audiences will understand but not empathize with. The film also diverts into X-Men territory by bringing in some new, powerful bad guys. While Elektra's only powers are the ability to kick ass and see slightly into the immediate future, the bad guy team is blessed with a slew of faceless characters with a variety of deadly gifts. One, Typhoid, has the ability to kill anything she touches just by a broken bar. Touching them, while Tattoo can bring his artistic body coverings to life to do his bidding, with wolves, birds and snakes all appearing throughout the movie. Newbies to Elektra's world will probably find this mutant plot point a little out of left field, especially when you consider that Daredevil has a mutant count of 0, so watching all these cold-eyed killers unleash their powers upon the film feels underdeveloped, and frankly a little silly. The central plot, in which the Hand tries to locate the treasure, rankles the nose with its simplistic, trite plotting. I guess it's a pure comic book story, but it's grossly mishandled by Rob Bowman, who cannot seem to give the film any serious character momentum. The film's fast-paced allure is derived primarily from Elektra and everyone else doing a lot of running around, fighting and screaming, and very little time is given to making sure the characters feel real or believable within the world of the film. While the opening credits to the film seem to point to Elektra herself being the treasure, it soon becomes apparent that it's Abby who is this film's chosen one, although her transition from sulky teen rebel to kick-ass wannabe assassin is also badly handled and poorly developed. That's not to say the cast are bad in and of themselves. Garner, as Elektra, does a solid job in providing her character with the same rough toughness we saw in Daredevil, while co-stars Goran Visnjic, as Mark, and Kirsten Prout, as Abby, provide a pleasant father-daughter relationship that contrasts well with Elektra's lone woman personality. McCabe is brought to life by a terrific Colin Cunningham, who flirts between being this film's comic relief and almost a brother figure to Elektra herself. Leading the bad guys is Will-Yan Lee, as Kirigi, an up-and-coming player with the hand, who hunts down Abby with precision and an almost arrogant demeanor at his own ability. Lee is menacing, yet as with all the characters in this film, grossly underdeveloped, underexplained, and lacking in motivation. Elektra is a film built on almost no momentum other than to get Garner into the iconic red outfit worn by her comic book counterpart. As a character, the film offers marginal insight into her psyche, something almost every other comic book movie gets right, and tries to juggle one too many balls in the air with regards to her backstory and origins. Rob Bowman's direction ranges from skillful during some of the action scenes, although they do become over-edited late in the piece, to outright boring during some of the dramatic moments. The characters fall flat on the screen, with a general feeling of disinterest by almost everyone involved. Terence Stamp, playing a blind sensei to Garner's Elektra, is the most egregious example of somebody just showing up to collect a paycheck. Brings with it a sense of fatal inadequacy from which no amount of visual effects, ripping sounds design or gratuitous slow-mo of Elektra's solid physique can be salvaged. It's telling that in 2005, Elektra was followed quickly by another CBM in Batman Begins, and it's little wonder which of the pair is most fondly remembered. Bowman must have watched Batman Begins and wondered why he couldn't have done the same to this film. Elektra is one palpitation away from being a complete emotional flatline, and the hodgepodge action scenes offer only minor respite between dull moments of inadequate storytelling. Elektra isn't a complete disaster, but by golly it's not far off. Rodney has been writing about films for well over 2 decades, appreciates a good wine, the love of his wife and kids, and the affection of his dog and cats. He has a fondness of cheesy 90s action and classic Hollywood, hates that physical media is disappearing, and wishes somebody would make a high-budget series of the never-ending story. Number 2. Quite recently, I wrote an article comparing the Kingpin from the 2003 Daredevil movie, and the Kingpin from the Daredevil TV show, and it got me thinking a what about Elektra, because yeah, she was in both the movie and the TV show as well. That's why I decided to highlight the Jennifer Garner Elektra movie, because honestly, I feel like a lot of people forget that movie even exists. Now, let me be clear, I don't really think Elektra is a good movie, per se. It has a lot of problems, and one might even argue that it's Marvel's version of Catwoman, meaning that it's really compy and bad, but I don't think that's the case. In fact, even though I don't think Elektra stands with the likes of, say, any of the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies or some of the X-Men movies, I definitely think Elektra's better than that god-awful first Wolverine film. I certainly think that the Jennifer Garner superhero film is a lot better than most people make it out to be, and I have 5 reasons why you should give it another shot. Oh, and spoilers up ahead. It is officially the first female-led Marvel superhero movie. Okay, yes, I know. This has nothing to do with the quality of the film, but I do think it's important that before there was a Captain Marvel or a Black Widow movie, there was Elektra. And while I definitely think that Captain Marvel was way better than Elektra, the verdict is still out on Black Widow. I do find it interesting to re-watch Elektra with the mindset of what the industry thought a female-led superhero movie should be back in 2005, and then juxtapose it with 2019. You may like, of course, there's a romance in Elektra, which involves a character named Mark Miller, played by Goran Visnjic. But the film doesn't overly sexualize Jennifer Garner too much, which is appreciated. In fact, the movie mostly sticks to action sequences and a wonky storyline involving something called the Treasure. I'll get to that soon. But as the first female superhero movie out of Marvel, it's not as cringe-inducing as it could have been, and it's certainly not as cringe-inducing as Catwoman. So, while Elektra is definitely not as progressive as Captain Marvel was with its messages of female empowerment and toppling the patriarchy, it's certainly no slouch, either. It's goofy but enjoyable. Okay, so let's talk about the story of Elektra, shall we? Because yeah, It's really silly. But you what? It's also kind of awesome, since this is a spin-off of the Ben Affleck Daredevil movie and Elektra died in that film. They had to bring her back to life in typical comic book fashion. And guess what? She comes back stronger than ever. Elektra is an assassin, but one with a heart, as she decides not to kill her targets once she realizes that she likes them. But this brings about a hunt for Elektra since she didn't go through with the hit. We find out that the girl Elektra was supposed to kill is known as the Treasure, which is a prophesied martial arts prodigy. I'm serious. And the killers out to get Elektra are really bizarre and unique, like a dude who has tattoo powers, named Tattoo, or woman who has a deadly kiss named Typhoid. The CG is pretty awful, even back then, but it's still really fun, especially Tattoo. I mean, as long as you don't take it seriously, it's a pretty enjoyable film. Which brings me to my next point. It represents the kind of Marvel film we never see anymore. Look, I love the MCU with my full heart and soul. But do you know what I kind of miss? Marvel movies that aren't all directly connected to one another. Now, this might be kind of silly to say since Elektra is directly connected to the Daredevil movie, but is it really? Yes, Elektra's death and resurrection had to be explained in this movie, and is actually worked into the plot since she gets resurrecting powers herself. But it's not like this movie was just another stepping stone to the next Marvel flick, which so many MCU films were on the way to leading up to Avengers: Infinity War. No, Elektra is that extremely rare Marvel movie that didn't get a sequel. It's its own little, self-contained adventure for an interesting character played by an excellent actress. It's a superhero film, sure, but it's one that you can just sit and enjoy knowing that once it's over, and you don't have to wait for the next one to come out. It's fun to compare this Elektra to the one from the Daredevil TV show. I mentioned earlier how I compared the Kingpin in the movie with the one in the TV show, and it was fun. But I could also compare Elektra's, as well. In one corner, you have the very lively and cool movie version of Elektra played by Jennifer Garner, who kind of goes through the entire film with a nod and a wink. And in the other corner, you have the deadly and anti-heroic TV version of Elektra, played by French actress Elodie Yung. Now, while I do think the Kingpin from the Daredevil TV show is better than the one in the movie, I actually prefer Jennifer Garner's Elektra's to Elodie Young's. It's not Young's fault either. She acts the role that she's given really well. But as much as I like the darker aesthetic of Daredevil and the Defenders, I prefer Garner's more energetic performance instead. Both Elektra's kick butt, but Garner's performance is the one that sticks with me more. Which brings me to my final point. Jennifer Garner kicks ass, and here's what may be the most important reason why you should give Elektra another chance. Jennifer Garner is just plain awesome in it. Because even though a lot of people might have first gotten to really know Jennifer Garner as Double Agent Sydney Bristow on Alias, no matter what she does, she's awesome in it. And Elektra is no exception. Jennifer Garner is what holds it all together. Yes, the story is super silly, and yes, the CG is terrible, but Jennifer Garner looks really cool swinging her say around like Raphael from the Ninja Turtles, and she delivers some truly ridiculous lines in a way that is still somehow engaging. If you're going to watch Elektra for any reason, watch it for her. In the end, Elektra is the kind of film that you watch and quickly forget about after it's over. But if it's a rainy day and Elektra just happens to be on TV, I say give it another shot, or a first shot if you've never seen it before. It's a turn your brain off kind of movie, and really, is there anything wrong with that? Number 3. Before Deadpool Wolverine even hit theaters, there was a lot of buzz surrounding the news that Jennifer Garner would be returning as the Marvel assassin Elektra for the first time in nearly 2 decades. Unsurprisingly, Garner fit back into the role like a glove alongside Hugh Jackman's Wolverine and Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool, both of whom are now officially part of the MCU. But as we reflect on what Marvel was like before the advent of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and long before the multiverse saga, one film that stands of note from those early 2000s attempts to bring Marvel Comics to life is Elektra. Spawning off the 2003 Daredevil film that featured Ben Affleck as the titular Man Without Fear, Elektra took a more introspective look at the titular assassin following her resurrection, and reminded us that the character has always been something of a badass. Jennifer Garner filmed Elektra on her alias hiatus. Like many of the action-packed superhero movies of its day, Elektra is often heavily criticized. Critics like Roger Ebert called the picture a bumpy collision between leftover bits and pieces of Marvel superhero stories, not sure what sort of tone it should maintain. Others, such as Scott Mendelson of Forbes, claimed that Elektra was single-handedly responsible for ruining Garner's career. However you feel about Elektra, it's probably nowhere near as bad as you've heard it to be. The action sequences are entertaining, and there's a good story in there somewhere about turning from violence and using your power to defend others rather than taking lives. While it's fair to say that the plot itself lacks serious depth and that the film feels particularly rushed at times, that's not entirely the fault of director Rob Bowman, of the X-Files fame, who wasn't exactly aided by the studio. I knew going into the project, because of the short prep, because I only had Jennifer for her hiatus from Alias, which was 10 weeks, and, because of the short post-production, that we weren't going to be able to make Spider-Man, the director told Now Playing magazine in 2005. We didn't have the time to make Daredevil. If anything, it's clear that Elektra was at least rushed by the folks at 20th Century Fox and Marvel Entertainment, who couldn't care to give the project the proper attention or care that either Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films nor even Garner's previous outing in Daredevil received. It also didn't help that Ike Perlmutter, Marvel Entertainment's CEO at the time, didn't believe that female-led superhero movies were a good idea. Whatever contractual obligations led to the making of Elektra, they didn't exactly pan out, as the film grossed about $53 million against the $65 million budget. Talk about a Washington. But what of the final product? Well, let's just say that, while it might not be as bad as some make it out to be, it's no masterpiece in hiding, either. Unlike Daredevil, a film arguably saved by its director's cut, Elektra didn't drastically change when Rob Bowman added only 3 minutes of extra footage back in for the home video release. Not even the, still, deleted scene with Ben Affleck's Matt Murdock could fix the rushed pacing, uneven characters, minus Terrence Stamp, who was just wonderful as Stick, and all-around goofiness of the Hans plan. It couldn't offer any additional chemistry between Garner and Goran Visnjic! Mark Miller. Nor could it excuse the fact that many of Elektra Natchios' best comic moments were tossed aside in favor of your standard action flick material. Still, even with that in mind, there's one particular redeeming quality about the film that we can't overlook. Jennifer Garner's performance elevates Elektra. Some of the fun action sequences aside, Jennifer Garner is, unsurprisingly, the best part about Elektra. After a decent intro performance in Daredevil, Elektra returns here after being resurrected by Stick to forge her own path. Though she begins the picture as a simple assassin, taking out some of the Hand's most heinous allies, Elektra ultimately follows in Daredevil's footsteps as a hero, protecting their next target, the intended treasure. Abby Miller, Kirsten Prout. Think the Black Sky concept from Netflix's Daredevil and the Defenders series, although the world around her is a bit hit or miss. Garner offers a solid performance that varies from cool and collected assassin to an older sister stand-in for Abby, who she has allowed herself to be vulnerable with. Garner's ability to deal with Elektra's conflicting callings, as either a merciless assassin or a potential hero in training, is admirable, and she's by far the most believable part of the film. Somehow, that's true even when she throws one of her say-through-a-dozen bushes to hit her target. Although Elektra is pushed into heroism upon defending the Millers from the Hand, who all, for some reason, combust Buffy the Vampire Slayer style when killed. Her demons are a bit more personal. Though Daredevil saw Elektra seek vengeance for the death of her father, played by Eric Avari, Elektra centers on the titular heroine's childhood trauma concerning the death of her mother. This tension plays well when juxtaposed with the almost sibling-like bond that Elektra begins to form with the young, and often annoying, Abby, whose presence helps her to let go of the past and focus on both the present and the future. Throughout the film, Elektra slowly peels back the layers of her memory to uncover the truth about her mother's death, and in dealing the killing blow to her mother's killer, Kirigi, William Lee, is able to finally move on to continue to fight the good fight another day. Some of Elektra's plot points don't add up. There are a few things about Elektra that don't quite add up when examined under the microscope. Why doesn't she go back to New York City and let Matt Murdock know she's alive? Why does Mark Miller tell Abby that they can't trust Elektra, only to kiss her moments later? Why doesn't the chase just protect Abby once they rescue her from the hand? Yet, despite all of those holes, Jennifer Garner's performance isn't what stalled Elektra's success, no matter what some might claim about her subsequent career. Sure, Elodie Yung arguably played a more comics-faithful version of the character in Netflix's Daredevil series, but Garner does her best to bring this particular rendition of the character to life. More than that, she humanizes Elektra in an interesting way we don't often see. There's a reason that fans were elated to see her return to the big screen for a third outing, even if her second feature film as the character wasn't an instant hit. Elektra's return in Deadpool Wolverine was well-deserved. In Deadpool Wolverine, Elektra returns alongside plenty of old Marvel movie favorites, such as Blade, Wesley Snipes, X-23, Daphne Keane, The Human Torch, Chris Evans, and, of course, Hugh Jackman's Wolverine. While Garner's previous Marvel film was a bit of a dud, it didn't dampen her impact in the latest Marvel Cinematic Universe project. If anything, it actually reinforced her in-universe motivations for wanting a proper ending. Elektra claims to have moved on from Daredevil and only wants to return to her home universe. In many ways, Jennifer Garner's MCU appearance redeems Elektra's lackluster ending. No, it doesn't fix any of the problems that her 2005 film had, but it does give us some better closure for the character. After all, the third time is the charm. It's a lot of fun to see Garner's Elektra back at work. In her battle against the other villains gathered in the Void, including her own killer Bullseye, we see the master assassin for whom she's always been. The hardened warrior returns to form and works alongside some of the most beloved pre-MCU Marvel heroes in a movie that, while also a bit uneven at times, is at least self-aware about it. If anything, it reminds us that Jennifer Garner was never the problem with Elektra, and while her version is arguably more heroic than most iterations of the character, that's nothing to be ashamed of. As the multiverse saga continues, ramping up to another two-part Avengers story that will likely bring back some of our favorite forgotten Marvels of the past 30 years. Here's hoping that we'll see Elektra. Number 4. Thought Jennifer Garner's Elektra was one of the better parts of Ben Affleck's Daredevil, even though she was horribly underused and felt more like a walking, talking prop than an actual character. Like most, I was excited to see her given her own feature, although tempered by the fact that it was a spin-off and thus, the narrative would follow the setup and tone from the Daredevil film. Directed by Star Trek, TNG producer Rob Bowman, who also gave us massive blockbusters like the first X-Files movie, and the dire Christian Bale Dragon film, Reign of Fire. I watched that recently, and it has not held up well. Elektra is a problematic feature film that cannot escape its inadequate direction, nor its inherently inane scripting. Whether it's a horrible film overall, however, is probably a point for the fanboys to continue arguing about. As a character, Elektra's parental issues and tragic childhood fascinated me. Her mother died when she was a child, and her father, here played as a younger man by Kurt Maxrunt, after Eric Avari essayed the role in Daredevil, was hellbent on preparing his daughter for a life of punishing lessons, and the main one depicted here being forcing the girl to tread water using only her legs for minutes, perhaps hours, at a time. Obviously, anybody who becomes an assassin has a few personal issues, and where I thought Elektra might have given us something more than we saw in Daredevil, Rob Bowman and his team completely dropped the ball. Elektra becomes just another tortured soul, a character born of some personal tragedy that fails utterly to register as anything but simplistic genre cliché. Bowman's flashbang editing style during moments of great import leave Elektra's backstory, told in flashback, of course, as hollow, empty scenes that audiences will understand but not empathize with. The film also diverts into X-Men territory by bringing in some new, powerful bad guys. While Elektra's only powers are the ability to kick ass and see slightly into the immediate future, The bad guy team is blessed with the slew of faceless characters with a variety of deadly gifts. One, Typhoid, has the ability to kill anything she touches just by a broken bar. Touching them, while Tattoo can bring his artistic body coverings to life to do his bidding, with wolves, birds and snakes all appearing throughout the movie. Newbies to Elektra's world will probably find this mutant plot point a little out of left field, especially when you consider that Daredevil has a mutant count of 0, so watching all these cold-eyed killers unleash their powers upon the film feels underdeveloped, and frankly a little silly. The central plot, in which the Hand tries to locate the treasure, rankles the nose with its simplistic, trite plotting. I guess it's a pure comic book story, but it's grossly mishandled by Rob Bowman, who cannot seem to give the film any serious character momentum. The film's fast-paced allure is derived primarily from Elektra and everyone else doing a lot of running around, fighting and screaming, and very little time is given to making sure the characters feel real or believable within the world of the film. While the opening credits to the film seem to point to Elektra herself being the treasure, it soon becomes apparent that it's Abby who is this film's chosen one. Although her transition from sulky teen rebel to kick-ass wannabe assassin is also badly handled and poorly developed. That's not to say the cast are bad in and of themselves. Garner, as Elektra, does a solid job in providing her character with the same rough toughness we saw in Daredevil, while co-stars Goran Visnjic, as Mark, and Kirsten Prout, as Abby, provide a pleasant father-daughter relationship that contrasts well with Elektra's lone woman personality. McCabe is brought to life by a terrific Colin Cunningham, who flirts between being this film's comic relief and almost a brother figure to Elektra herself. Leading the bad guys is Will-Yan Lee, as Kirigi, an up-and-coming player with the Hand, who hunts down Abby with precision and an almost arrogant demeanor at his own ability. Lee is menacing, yet as with all the characters in this film, grossly underdeveloped, underexplained, and lacking in motivation. Elektra is a film built on almost no momentum other than to get Garner into the iconic red outfit worn by her comic book counterpart. As a character, the film offers marginal insight into her psyche, something almost every other comic book movie gets right, and tries to juggle one too many balls in the air with regards to her backstory and origins. Rob Bowman's direction ranges from skillful during some of the action scenes, although they do become over-edited late in the piece, to outright boring during some of the dramatic moments. The characters fall flat on the screen, with a general feeling of disinterest by almost everyone involved. Terence Stamp, playing a blind sensate to Garner's Elektra, is the most egregious example of somebody just showing up to collect a paycheck, brings with it a sense of fatal inadequacy from which no amount of visual effects, ripping sounds design or gratuitous slow-mo of Elektra's solid physique can be salvaged. It's telling that in 2005, Elektra was followed quickly by another CBM in Batman Begins, and it's little wonder which of the pair is most fondly remembered. Bowman must have watched Batman Begins and wondered why he couldn't have done the same to this film. Elektra is one palpitation away from being a complete emotional flatline, and the hodgepodge action scenes offer only minor respite between dull moments of inadequate storytelling. Elektra isn't a complete disaster, but by golly it's not far off. Rodney has been writing about films for well over 2 decades, appreciates a good wine, the love of his wife and kids, and the affection of his dog and cats. He has a fondness of cheesy 90s action and classic Hollywood, hates that physical media is disappearing, and wishes somebody would make a high-budget series of the never-ending story. Number 5. The 2003 film Daredevil, starring Ben Affleck as the titular hero, Matt Murdock, was a commercial success despite some tepid reviews. Among the handful of kind words offered by fans and critics was praise for Jennifer Garner, a standout as Murdock's love interest, the vengeful Elektra. Roger Ebert, hilariously, expressed concerns over the love story's more intimate scenes. She and Daredevil are powerfully attracted to each other, and even share some PG-13 sex, which is a relief because when superheroes have sex at the R level, I am always afraid someone will get hurt. Definitely a new perspective on the superhero genre. Garner would reprise her role in the 2005 spin-off film Elektra, in which, spoilers for the ending of Daredevil, Elektra returns from the dead, builds herself a burgeoning business as an assassin, complete with a booking agent played by Colin Cunningham, and protects a young martial arts prodigy and her father. The solo outing was produced on a small budget of only $43 million and on a quick schedule due to Garner's schedule with Alias, for which she was on hiatus. Jennifer showed up within days of the first day of shooting, and I went back to work with her just days after wrapping on Alias. The prep was very compressed, director Rob Bowman told IGN, but that was just the nature of the beast. We had to start shooting when Jennifer finished Alias and we had to let her go at the end of her hiatus, and that drove everything. Filming all this, we did the best we could with the time we had. Unfortunately, the best they could do received negative reviews and was a financial failure. Still, Elektra deserves a second look for some intense action and a surprisingly redemptive ending. Elektra ends with peace. Elektra has quite a journey throughout the film, having died at the end of Daredevil. Apologies for spoiling a movie that came out in 2003. She's brought back to life by a martial arts mystic known as Stick, played by superhero alum Terrence Stamp, General Zod in Superman 2. After her resurrection, Elektra goes through a rigorous training program and eventually becomes an assassin. Logical step. This delightful gig leads her to Mark, Goran Visnjic, Abby, Kirsten Zien, and a difficult choice. She can either shoot them, which is her job, or have a short romance with Mark and become a mother figure to Abby. Elektra chooses the latter option. The trio does everything they can to escape the Hand, a martial arts cabal intent on kidnapping Abby. This brings Elektra into a fight with Kirigi, William Lee, the man who murdered her mother. When Abby is killed during the battle, Elektra revives her using Kamagir, eventually telling Abby to try and live a normal life before heading off to her next adventure. It's clear that Elektra has finally let go of her anger, achieved some measure of peace after the death of her parents, and is ready to move forward in her life. What's less clear is why she chooses to do it away from Mark and Abby after having built a relationship with them both. Why not stay with the pair, enjoying some hard-won domestic bliss? While it's never stated that Elektra is on her way to rid the world of the rest of the Hand members, it seems evident that she leaves to take care of some serious business, and tracking down the last few remaining members of Crime Syndicate is a worthy mission. Either way, some of Elektra's last words to Abby are a promise that they'll find each other, giving audiences hope for the trio. Elektra's new love interest, the character of Mark Miller, is definitely no Daredevil, Elektra's previous love interest. In fact, the charming father of young Abby seems completely at odds with the guardian devil spirit that personifies Matt Murdock. While Elektra and Mark share a sweet romantic relationship, he's still very much focused on keeping his daughter safe. During the film, audiences discover that Mark's wife was killed a few years prior to the start of the story, another casualty of the Hand's search for Abby, which is why everything in his life is about protecting her. In the end, though, after Elektra has resurrected Abby and the three of them recuperate, Mark and Elektra share a bittersweet kiss that seems to indicate their affair has ended. Obviously, Mark will stay with Abby and attempt to give the poor girl something of a normal life. In their final moments together, Elektra walks out the door, turning back to share a smile with Mark before she leaves, leaving romantic audiences with a hint of a happily ever after for the pair, even if it's somewhere in the distant future. A rebellious treasure. It seems like very early 2000s action movie needs a rebellious teenager to soften the edgy hero, which is a perfect descriptor of Abby Miller's character. Kirsten Zien plays the role of Abby Miller, credited as Kirsten Prout at the time. Audiences meet Abby as she's trying to rob Elektra. Bad idea. However, she immediately realizes that Elektra is not your average adult when Elektra nearly impales her with a knife. And even though Abby doesn't die at the beginning of the film, despite Elektra's best efforts, she is eventually killed by typhoid, Natasha Mulv, at the end. Don't worry, though, the martial arts prodigy known as the Treasure is saved and brought back to life by Elektra, who can perform the Kamigir now that she's released her rage. Since the Hand appears to be disbanded, Abby and her father are free to pursue a normal life. Go to the beach, get a tan, Elektra tells her. The two have clearly developed a bond, and Elektra promises her they'll find each other again. Abby hugs her protector goodbye, and the question of whether she will continue to train in martial arts is left unanswered. It's safe to assume, though, that her time with Elektra has left Abby sharper and more prepared for any challenges life has in store for her. A morally ambiguous mentor. Elektra's martial arts mentor is Stick, Terence Stamp, who isn't above exiling his Prot. A copyright G8 copyright and then setting her up to assassinate a child. Elektra discovers that Stick set up the hit on Mark and Abby as a test of whether Elektra has moved past her anger management issues and will choose not to kill a child. It seems like there are better ways to check that. The hit is also intended to lead Elektra to Abby, the next martial arts treasure. The end of Elektra sees Stick waiting for her outside her childhood home, finally offering some positive words for Elektra, telling her that she didn't turn out too bad. We assume that he'll keep an eye on Abby as she ages, just to ensure she doesn't feel the urge to become an assassin like his last student. As part of his inspiration for the role, Stamp was influenced by Russian philosopher from the 1920s. Though he didn't name the particular thinker he was referencing, Stamp told Movie Web, "I thought a lot about him. He was one of those people who was deadly serious about increasing the consciousness of people, and he did have a band of disciples that he dragged across the world with him." Motherhood is a central theme in the movie's climax. Abby Miller is killed by the Hand in much the same way as Elektra's mother, who was a casualty of the Hand's search for Elektra. In the Marvel Universe, being a martial arts wunderkind doesn't necessarily make you any safer. It often just puts your loved ones in danger. However, this shared sense of loss connects Elektra and Abby, pulling them closer as they both search for peace and safety. While Elektra can protect Abby in a way that neither of their mothers were able to do for them, it's her relationship with Abby that helps Elektra to move on from her tragic past. By caring for a young girl, guiding her through the trials of being the treasure, and encouraging her to live a normal life, Elektra softens, letting go of her guilt and rage. At several points throughout the film, Abby rushes to defend Elektra, jumping into fights well beyond her skill level. It's easy to see how anxious Abby is over her concern for Elektra, clearly unwilling to allow another mother figure to die for her sake. It's interesting, though, that despite obviously caring for Abby, Elektra chooses to leave at the end of the film, knowing she has more work to do. This is at odds with many other motherhood narratives that push female characters towards the idea of sacrifice at the cost of the self. Elektra is allowed the space she needs to progress and fully heal from the trauma of her mother's death. And, let's face it, her own. Dealing with trauma. Of course, Elektra isn't just the name of a comic book character, it's also an ancient Greek tragedy about revenge and grief. Obviously, creator Frank Miller, who introduced the character during his run on Daredevil in the 80s, wasn't afraid to look for classical inspiration in his work. This idea of trauma isn't thoroughly examined in the 2005 film, which is a shame since there are moments when the movie does touch on some compelling facets of Elektra's life and personality. Perhaps that rushed production held the story back from being everything it could have been in this particular regard. Audiences see a flashback of Elektra's childhood, showing her as a young girl struggling to tread water in the family's pool. Her father forces her to continue, though what she'll learn from drowning is anyone's guess. She's only a girl. Her mother cries, which her father ignores, forcing his young daughter to continue in her fight to stay afloat. As an adult, Elektra carries around her mother's necklace, clearly devastated by her mother's death, less so about her father's. Fair enough. Beyond this brief flashback, however, there's little mention of her father, a lost opportunity to flesh out her character. Later, Abby watches Elektra walking and realizes that she counts her steps, sometimes a symptom of OCD. Abby mentions it to her, though Elektra denies having any issues with OCD behaviors. Again, another moment that could have offered us greater insight into the struggles Elektra faces, passed by in favor of a quick action scene. Searching for peace. Letting go of the past is a difficult task for a superhero whose memories involuntarily skip through time. Imagine trying to let go of childhood trauma, only to be catapulted back into your worst moments. After Stick brings her back to life, Elektra spends some time in his training camp, trying to work out her frustrations from having died by slamming her fellow students into the ground, not the healthiest way of dealing with emotional issues. Stick excommunicates her from his little band, pushing her into the killer-for-hire scene, a career choice that fuels her rage and emotional detachment. However, the only way for Elektra to move forward and control Camille, the power of time travel and resurrection, is through letting go of her rage. Elektra is finally able to access the total reach of Camille by the end of the film, her grief over Abby's death enabling her to release the vengeful emotions that have ruled her adult life. Could there be another Elektra film? The Marvel movie landscape in the early 2000s was very different than it is today. After the tepid critical response to Daredevil, Garner hadn't wanted to continue playing Elektra. According to Michael Vartan, Garner's Alias co-star and friend, Garner only reprised her role of Elektra because she was contractually obligated, via SF-gate. In later years, Garner has spoken about the experience of working within the Marvel Universe at the time, praising the more recent work of current studio head Kevin Feige and the legacy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. It's such a shame, honestly, because once Kevin Feige took over everything, there was elevated, the writing, the direction, the comedy inside of the stories they were telling. And I did not have that experience, she told The Hollywood Reporter. Zack Snyder once expressed a desire to direct an Elektra reboot in a conversation with Comic Book Debate. With the character now under the Marvel Studios umbrella, and a Daredevil Disney Plus show coming, another Elektra movie could be on the horizon. If Garner was offered a chance to work again in the modern Marvel universe, would she take it? Let's hope so, because if anyone deserves to show off her mad skills with the blade, it's Jennifer Garner. Elektra's theatrical version was never properly finished. Elektra director Rob Bowman never felt like the theatrical version of the film represented the best that he and his crew could do, primarily due to the time and budget constraints under which the cast and crew are operating. The final theatrical version of Elektra is not a total version, Bowman explained to IGN. I got it done. I'd come back to the studio and I'd watch a reel. I'd give them notes. I'd get in my car and I'd drive to Burbank for the color and give them notes. I'd go to the lab for the print and give them notes. It was just due to the nature of the short post, and we wanted to hit a certain release date. Marvel Studios chief Avi Arad admitted at the time that Elektra had been rushed. We will never do that again, he told Variety. Bowman eventually created a director's cut of the movie for the DVD release that incorporates deleted scenes and fixes some of the issues with the editing. Some deleted scenes, though, never made it back into the film. Ben Affleck had filmed a cameo reprising his role as Daredevil, at Garner's request, for the Sydney Morning Herald, but even he ultimately landed on the cutting room floor. During filming, Bowman was clear that Daredevil should only return as a memory of Elektra's, telling IGN, "This was the only time and the only place I could put him, was when she's sort of in a recovery, dream state. And I couldn't let the audience start to believe or suppose that he may return at the end of the movie. I wanted the audience to believe, it's either Elektra's going to solve this or we're doomed." Garner learned martial arts for the film. While Garner may have been disappointed in how the movie turned out, she loved the role's physicality. "I've been training for the past couple of months. I trained after the junket last night and got up this morning and will go again tonight, and I'm loving it. I love that aspect of it," she said at the time, via Comic Book Movie. Garner has always spoken of her love for training and doing stunt work, even telling Drew Barrymore, "The whole reason I got so excited about investing myself in stunts, and doing them all, and learning to fight, and being on wires, was because of Charlie's Angels." Garner took that love of stunt work and action scenes to the sets of Daredevil and Elektra when she trained for almost 4 months before the filming of Daredevil, practicing her psi skills. Though this didn't always prevent accidents, Garner revealed to Film Is Now that the camera crew had to be brave while filming, since her sword slipped out of her hands more than once, almost impaling a few of them.